This is the story of Microsoft and the biggest mistake of Bill Gates' life. In 1975, the pioneering technology giant Microsoft would be born out of the Silicon Valley by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. And just a year later, Steve Jobs and Wozniak would found Apple Computers, a major competitor. These two companies would end up being the largest in the world and would pioneer what we now know as the big tech sector. Apple would go heavily into building hardware devices like iMacs and iPhones. These hardware devices would then use exclusive Apple software. However, Bill Gates and Paul Allen would focus exclusively on software that could be used on any brand of hardware device. At the time, IBM was the leading tech powerhouse, and Bill Gates and Paul Allen would get their first big break by striking a licensing deal with IBM. IBM would build their computers, and they would bundle that with Microsoft's operating system software, and Microsoft would get a royalty from each one of those sales. And as a licensing deal, Microsoft would be able to maintain ownership of their product. Bill Gates would build this first operating system by buying an existing operating system and modifying it. This would become known as MS-DOS. This would make Microsoft instantly successful, and they would replicate this business model and expand to offer their operating system to more computer brands like Dell computers. And as the popularity of the personal computers for regular people started to blow up, they would be the main operating system for the majority of all computer brands, and this would lead them into massive success. In 1982, Gates' founding partner Paul Allen was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Combine this with the fact that he was already wildly rich from Microsoft, he didn't want to work as hard as he used to. Now his partner, Bill Gates, is notorious for having an insane work ethic, so naturally this created a rift in their relationship. Paul wanted to enjoy life outside of work, and Bill wanted to keep pushing Microsoft to new heights. A year later, in 1983, 4 years prior to Microsoft ever even having their IPO, Bill Gates would offer Paul Allen $5 a share to buy all of his Microsoft shares and take over everything. This would have made Paul Allen a billionaire, but he decided to pass because he wanted $10 a share, to which Bill refused. Regardless of this friction, Microsoft kept going and was very successful, and in 1986 they would take their company public on the stock market, having their IPO, which means initial public offering. Bill Gates at that point owned 49% of the company, and Paul Allen owned 25%. This made Gates the youngest ever billionaire at 31 in 1987, with Paul Allen right behind him. Sadly, in 2018, Paul Allen would die of his disease, something that left Bill with major regrets from their relationship strains. If you valued Paul Allen's original 25% ownership of Microsoft and compared it to the 2022 peak price of almost $3 trillion, Paul Allen's original shares would be worth close to $750 billion, making him richer than anyone ever by a long shot. Microsoft has had 3 CEOs in its history, and the second one would be Steve Ballmer after Bill Gates stepped down. Ballmer and Bill knew each other from Harvard, where they went together before Bill famously dropped out. Ballmer worked his way up through the ranks of Microsoft, rising from within the company before finally becoming CEO. However, Steve's reign was highly tarnished by the 2000 dot-com bubble, which was the hardest hitting bear market for tech stocks ever. At the time, Wall Street tech industry had skyrocketed in valuation. Companies like Microsoft were strong because they had actual real earnings. But the tech industry overall had ballooned with hot air, as many of these companies were going public with zero revenue and sky-high valuations. It was thought that these internet companies had infinite potential from the infinite reach of the internet, which was still new and radically changing. Around the same time, Microsoft would be hit in a landmark antitrust case. The Windows operating system was so dominant across all computer types that it was considered a monopoly. They leveraged this to force the Microsoft users to only use the Microsoft Internet browser called Internet Explorer. This gave them a monopoly over everyone's access to the internet, which would probably make them the #1 search engine. But since they lost that case, they were forced to let competitors in, and slowly Google would become the #1 browser and the #1 search engine. Under Steve Ballmer as CEO, Microsoft would do a great job and it would grow their revenue and their profits. But Microsoft, even after 14 years of growth under Ballmer, still had not reached its old peak of valuation from before the dot-com bubble. A company that has lost 80% of its value is now worth 20% of what it used to be. From that value, it must gain 400% or 5x its value just to get back to its old highs. That was the severity of the dot-com bubble for the tech industry. During the Ballmer era, Microsoft completely missed out on the smartphone industry, which Bill has openly regretted, and Apple went on to dominate with the iPhone. They were also trying to compete with Google as a search engine company, but in both of these categories, they were way far behind. Perhaps this is why Microsoft decided to change to a new CEO, and in 2014, Ballmer would step down, immediately buying the LA Clippers, and Satya Nadella would become the new CEO, which he is still currently present at. Satya had been with Microsoft for over 20 years. He had a particular expertise in certain divisions that interested Bill. Under Nadella, Microsoft would give up on developing smartphones and putting a whole bunch more money into the search engines. Instead, they decided to refocus all of their resources and attentions back to their core business model, the SaaS business model, and foray into the cloud computing space that was beginning to massively expand. SaaS stands for Software as a Service, which is a cloud-based subscription business model. So instead of selling Windows software for $100 and then making no money, you pay on a per month subscription. Now, this would secure them a reoccurring massive revenue source and skyrocket their total profits. This has just continued the success of their legacy products. Their operating system, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, among many others. Their cloud computing business has been a tremendous success and is expanding rapidly. They have also done extremely well in the gaming industry, with early acquisition of Xbox and later buying Activision Blizzard, a gaming company. Much of big tech is getting into gaming because previously games were sold for one price, one and done. Now they're starting to have more profit in them, like subscription models or users being able to buy game items to make their characters better. So this makes gaming a much more profitable endeavor. Microsoft has also acquired Bing to bolster their search engine division and LinkedIn to have their own social media platform tailored to job seekers and businesses offering jobs. And the most recent Microsoft development is that they have bought ChatGPT. So this is the race into artificial intelligence. Apple Computers almost went bankrupt and died after they fired the founder Steve Jobs, only to hire him back, spurring the biggest comeback story of all time. He came out with products like the iPhone, which are some of the most popular of all time. But during those hard years for Apple, Microsoft just continued to grow and dominate in their particular space. And Bill Gates would be launched to become the richest man alive. He would also sit on that podium #1 spot for many, many, many years. Along the way, Bill befriended famous investor Warren Buffett, the legend from Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett is known for having no interest in buying and investing in tech companies, which is obviously Bill's expertise. Perhaps this Warren Buffett influence, combined with the painful memory of the dot-com bubble that took over a decade to recover from, would lead Bill Gates to begin to diversify his net worth. Perhaps it was time for retirement and new challenges like philanthropic work. Either way, Gates would start selling his Microsoft shares in 2017, buying stock in other companies through his investing company, Cascade Investments. The investing style utilized at Cascade mirrors a low-risk Warren Buffett style of investing. He also founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the largest nonprofit there is. This foundation has done many things, but it should be known that billionaires can use these nonprofits for profit. You're obviously going to owe tax as a billionaire. Instead of giving that money to the government, you can donate it and write it off so you don't pay the tax. But if you give that to a nonprofit and you own the nonprofit, you can then write that tax off, not paying it, and invest it through the nonprofit. Bill has also become the largest landowner in the world by buying up vast tracts of farming land. His land holdings are a very small percentage of his total net worth. This could make him a powerhouse in the food production industry as well as land ownership. He's expanded into nuclear energy, health, vaccines in foreign countries, as well as clean drinkable water in third world countries, among many, many, many other things. Now, Microsoft went on to become the second largest company in modern day history with a peak valuation of $3 trillion. Had Gates held his original 49%, his Microsoft shares would be worth $1.5 trillion, which is more than Bezos, Elon Musk combined times 2. But who would have thought that the tech industry would go on to dominate everything and hold on to those valuations? But perhaps Bill Gates' diversified spread of investments is possibly going to be worth more than those Microsoft shares would have been. But either way, Bill Gates deserves a spot as one of the top businessmen of all time.